The Witness's Shadow. Book 2 of the Ashford Creek series. Chapter 1. The Call from Stillwater. The phone rang at 3:17 a.m. Leo Hargrave was already awake. He was always awake at 3:17 now. The clock on the motel nightstand glowed red, casting thin blood-colored light across the cheap floral bedspread. Somewhere outside, a train horn sounded, long and low and mournful. The sound reminded him of the creek. Everything reminded him of the creek. He picked up the phone. Unknown number. That meant nothing anymore. Unknown numbers had become his life. Hargrave. A pause, then a woman's voice, young, trembling, barely above a whisper. Are you the witness? Leo sat up slowly. The bone knife lay on the pillow beside him, still cold, still dark. It hadn't glowed in 3 months, not since the river in Oklahoma, not since he had witnessed the last of the drowned and watched the golden light fade from the blade. Who is this? He asked. My name is Dr. Myra Vance. I'm a hydrologist at Stillwater University. I found your name in Elias Croft's papers. He said he wrote that you could see things in water, things that shouldn't be there. Leo's jaw tightened. Croft. He hadn't spoken to Croft in weeks. The old man had gone silent after Oklahoma. No calls, no texts, no cryptic messages about haunted reservoirs or singing lakes. Leo had assumed he was dead, or worse. Where is Croft now? Another pause, longer this time. When Myra spoke again, her voice cracked. He's in the water. Leo swung his legs over the side of the bed. The motel room was dark except for the clock and the faint gray light seeping through the curtains. Dawn was coming. He had maybe an hour before the sun rose over whatever forgotten town he had landed in last night. Start from the beginning, Leo said. Myra took a breath, then she began. Stillwater, Minnesota was named for its lake, a wide, shallow body of water that sat at the edge of town like a sleeping animal. Locals said it was called Stillwater because the surface was always calm, even when the wind blew. No ripples, no waves, just glass. Leo had never been to Stillwater. He had never heard of it. But when Myra described the lake, the unnatural stillness, the way children refused to play near the shore, the 3 fishermen who had vanished in the past year without a trace, he felt the familiar cold settle into his chest. The lake took them, Myra said. I know that sounds insane. I'm a scientist. I don't believe in ghosts or curses or whatever, but I've been testing the water for 18 months. The chemical composition is normal. The temperature is normal. The pH is normal, but something is wrong with it. Wrong how? People change when they go near it. Not everyone, just some. They get quiet, distant. They stare at the water for hours without blinking, and then, her voice broke again. And then they walk in, not running, not fighting, just walking like they're going home. Leo stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the motel parking lot was empty. A single streetlight buzzed in the darkness. Beyond it, a field stretched toward a line of trees, and beyond the trees, he could just barely see the glint of water. What lake are you near right now? He asked quietly. Myra was silent for a long moment. I'm not near a lake, Sheriff. I'm standing at the edge of one. Leo closed his eyes. The bone knife on the bed began to hum. He drove for 14 hours. The road from the motel to Stillwater cut through farmland and forest, past tiny towns with no stoplights and no names he could remember. The sun rose behind him, then climbed overhead, then began to fall in front of him. He didn't stop to eat. He didn't stop to sleep. He only stopped once, to fill the gas tank and buy a map he didn't need. The bone knife hummed the whole way, low and steady, like a second heartbeat. He arrived at Stillwater at 7:42 p.m. just as the sun was touching the tree line. The town was small, smaller than Ashford Creek, even with a single main street, a post office, a diner, and a church with a broken steeple. The lake was visible from everywhere. It sat at the center of the town like a dark eye. Myra Vance was waiting for him at the diner. She was younger than he had expected, late 20s, with short brown hair and sharp brown eyes that had seen too much too quickly. Her hands were wrapped around a cold coffee mug, and she didn't stand when Leo walked in. "You're the witness," she said, "not a question." Leo sat across from her. "You're the hydrologist who called me at 3 a.m. I didn't know who else to call. Croft said you were the only one who could help, and now Croft is—" She stopped, swallowed. "How much did he tell you about the lake?" "Nothing. He's been silent for months. I thought he was dead." "He's not dead, not yet, but he's been in the water for 3 days." Leo leaned back. The bone knife hummed against his hip. "Tell me exactly what happened." Myra closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet. 3 weeks ago, I got a call from Elias. He said he had found something big, something older than the creek, older than the well, older than anything he had ever documented. He said the lake in Stillwater wasn't just haunted, it was a door. A door to where? He didn't say. He just sent me coordinates and told me to bring as much equipment as I could carry. When I got here, he was already at the lake. He had been there for 2 days. He looked wrong. Wrong how? Thinner, paler. His eyes were dark, not bloodshot, just dark, like something was draining him from the inside. He kept muttering about a woman in the water who had been waiting for someone to open the door. Leo felt the cold spread through his chest. A woman in the water. That phrase had followed him from Ashford Creek to the well to the quarry to the river. It was always a woman, always waiting, always hungry. "The door," Leo said. "Did he open it?" Myra nodded slowly. 3 nights ago. He walked into the lake at midnight. I tried to stop him, but he pushed me away. He said, the witness is coming. I have to prepare the way." Then the water closed over his head and he didn't come back up. The diner was quiet. The only other customer, an old man in a trucker hat, had fallen asleep at the counter. The waitress was wiping the same spot on the counter over and over, her eyes fixed on the window. Leo pulled the bone knife from his belt and laid it on the table. The blade was glowing, not blue this time, not white, red, deep and dark, the color of old blood. "He wasn't preparing the way for me," Leo said quietly. "He was preparing the way for her." Myra stared at the knife. "For who?" Leo looked out the window. Beyond the main street, beyond the church with the broken steeple, the lake glittered under the first stars of evening. It was perfectly still, perfectly calm. But beneath the surface, something was moving. "The first one," Leo said. "The one who started all of this, before Eliza Crane, before Rebecca Thorne, before Temperance Mather. There was another, older, hungrier, and I think she just found a way out." Outside the diner, the wind picked up. It came from the direction of the lake, cold and wet, carrying the smell of deep water and older things. Leo stood on the sidewalk, the bone knife in his hand, watching the lake shimmer under the rising moon. The town of Stillwater had gone quiet. No cars, no voices, no dogs barking. Even the insects had stopped singing. "It wasn't always like this," Myra said, coming to stand beside him. "The silence, I mean, it started about a year ago. First the birds stopped coming, then the frogs, then the crickets. Now even the wind seems afraid to make noise." "The lake is eating the sound," Leo said. "Same way Ashford Creek ate time, same way the well ate memory." "What does this one eat?" Leo looked at the knife. The red glow pulsed, slow and steady, like a heartbeat. "Hope," he said. "The lake eats hope. That's why people walk into it, not because they're scared, because they stop being scared. They stop being anything, they just go." Myra hugged herself against the cold. "Can you stop it?" Leo didn't answer. He walked toward the lake. The shore was lined with stones, smooth, gray, worn down by centuries of water. Leo knelt at the edge and dipped his fingers into the lake. The water was warm, too warm, body temperature warm. And it was moving. Not the surface. The surface was still as glass, but beneath, deep beneath, currents swirled in slow, deliberate circles like something breathing. "The door," Leo murmured. "Croft said there was a door." He stood and walked along the shore, the bone knife held out in front of him. The red glow grew brighter as he moved north, then dimmer as he moved south. He followed the light. At the northern edge of the lake, where the water met a wall of moss-covered boulders, the knife flared so brightly that Leo had to shield his eyes. The red light painted the boulders in blood, and in that light he saw it. A door, not made of wood or iron or stone, made of water. A vertical sheet of liquid, perfectly still, perfectly clear, hanging in the air between two boulders like a window into another world. Beyond it, Leo could see not water but sky, stars, a moon. But the moon was wrong, too large, too red, hanging low over a landscape of black glass and dead trees. "That's not Minnesota," Myra whispered behind him. "No," Leo said, "it's not." He raised the bone knife. The blade hummed so loudly now that he could feel it in his teeth. "Elias Croft is in there," Myra said. "You're going to go in after him." Leo nodded. "And the woman, the first one, she's in there too." Another nod. Myra grabbed his arm. "Then let me come with you. I've been studying this lake for 18 months. I know its patterns, its temperatures, its depths. If anyone can help you survive in there." "You can't," Leo said gently. "The knife chose me. The water knows me, but you're still human. If you go through that door, you won't come back." Myra's grip tightened, then slowly she let go. "How long do I wait?" Leo looked at the red moon beyond the water door, at the black glass landscape, at the shadows moving in the distance, shapes that looked like people but weren't. 3 days, he said. "If I'm not back in 3 days, drive south. Don't look back, don't stop, and don't let anyone else go near the water." He stepped toward the door. "Sheriff," Myra called. "What's your name, your real name? Croft never told me." Leo paused. The water door rippled, reaching for him like a living thing. "Leo," he said, "Leo Hargrave." Then he stepped through. The world turned inside out. For one terrible moment, Leo felt himself pulled in every direction at once, up and down, forward and backward, alive and dead. The bone knife screamed in his hand. The red light swallowed everything. Then silence. He opened his eyes. The sky above him was red. The ground beneath him was black glass, cracked and sharp, reflecting the enormous moon that hung overhead like a wound. There was no wind, no sound, no water. But in the distance, standing at the edge of a frozen lake that should not exist, was a woman. She was tall, pale, dressed in white, not a dress, but something older, something that looked like it had been woven from moonlight and bone. Her hair was black and fell past her waist. Her face was beautiful and terrible, and when she smiled, Leo saw that her teeth were too sharp, too many, too old. "Welcome," she said, and her voice was the sound of ice cracking on a deep lake, "to my reflection." Leo raised the bone knife. "Where is Elias Croft?" The woman tilted her head. Her smile widened. "He's here. They're all here. Everyone who ever walked into my water, everyone who ever drowned in a lake that remembered too much, they're all here, waiting, watching, hoping that someone will finally witness them." She took a step forward. The black glass cracked beneath her bare feet. "But you're not here for them, are you, witness? You're here for me." Leo tightened his grip on the knife. "Who are you?" The woman laughed. It was a beautiful sound. It was a terrible sound. "I am the first hunger," she said. "The seed that temperance carried was only a fragment of me. The creek was only a dream of me. The well was only a whisper. I am what water becomes when it is left alone too long. I am the shadow that falls when the witness looks away." She stopped a few feet from Leo. Up close, he could see that her eyes were not eyes. They were water, deep and dark and infinite, reflecting faces he had witnessed and faces he had never seen. "You witnessed the creek," she said. You witnessed the well, you witnessed the quarry and the river and the lake, but you never witnessed me, and now I am free." Leo looked at the bone knife. The red glow had changed, darker now, almost black, as if the knife itself was afraid. "How do I witness something that has no soul?" he asked. The woman's smile faded. "Everything has a soul, witness, even hunger, even shadows, even me." She reached out her hand, pale, long-fingered, dripping with water that should not have been there. "Witness me, Leo Hargrave, or drown trying." Behind her, the frozen lake began to crack, and from the cracks, hands emerged, hundreds of hands, thousands of hands reaching up, reaching out, reaching for him. Leo raised the knife. And the world went dark. End of Chapter 1. To be continued in Chapter 2, The Reflection. Chapter 2, The Reflection. The darkness did not last. It never did. For Leo, darkness had become a doorway, not an ending but a passage. He felt the bone knife in his hand, warm now, almost hot, and he held onto that warmth like a lifeline. When the light returned, he was somewhere else. The red sky was gone. The black glass ground was gone. The woman in white was gone. He stood in a room, an ordinary room with walls and a floor and a ceiling. The walls were covered in photographs, not like Martha's basement. These were different, older, faded. Photographs of people Leo had never seen, standing in front of houses he had never visited, smiling smiles he had never witnessed. And in every photograph in the background, standing at the edge of a lake, was the woman. Not blurred, not hidden, clear as day, watching, waiting. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Leo spun around. Elias Croft stood behind him. The old man looked terrible. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow, his clothes hanging loose on a body that had lost too much weight too quickly. But he was alive, and he was smiling. "Croft," Leo said, "what happened to you?" Croft laughed, a dry, brittle sound. "I opened the door just like she wanted, just like I was always going to." You knew what was behind the door, and you opened it anyway." "I knew there was something behind the door. I've been chasing it for 30 years, Leo. Every creek, every well, every quarry, every river. I wasn't documenting the seed. I was following it, trying to find its source, and I found it." He gestured at the photographs. "She's been here since before humans walked upright, before the ice came and went, before the continents drifted apart. She is the oldest hunger, Leo, and she has been waiting for someone to witness her for 2 billion years." Leo looked at the photographs, at the woman's face, at her empty water eyes. "Why does she need a witness?" Croft's smile faded. "Because she's alone. Imagine being the only thing that exists for 1 billion years. No one to see you, no one to remember you, no one to even know you're there. That's not hunger, Leo. That's hell." Leo felt the bone knife pulsing in his hand. Not red now, not black, something else. Something he had never seen before. So she created the seed, scattered it across the world, let it grow into creeks and wells and quarries and rivers. Let it drown people. Let it collect souls, because every drowning was a prayer, every death was a witness, every lost soul was someone who had seen her, even for a moment. Croft nodded. "And then you came. You witnessed the creek. You freed the souls, you cut the seed. And every time you did, you took something from her, not her hunger, her memory. She started to forget who she was, what she was, why she was waiting." He stepped closer. His hollow eyes were wet. "She's not evil, Leo. She's just forgotten." Leo stared at the photographs, at the woman's face, at the billion-year hunger behind her empty eyes. "Where is she now?" Croft pointed at the far wall. In the center of the photographs there was a door, not made of water this time, made of glass, clear and cold, reflecting Leo's own face back at him. "She's waiting for you on the other side, but you can't take the knife." Leo's grip tightened. "Why not?" "Because the knife is made from a drowning victim. It's a witness, and she doesn't want a witness anymore. She wants a companion, someone to stay with her, someone to remember with her, someone to be alone with her forever. Croft reached out and placed his hand over Leo's. If you go through that door with the knife, she will destroy it, and then she will destroy you. But if you go without the knife, if you go as just Leo, not as the witness, she might listen. She might let you see her, really see her, not as a monster, as what she was before the loneliness. Leo looked at the bone knife, at the faded symbols, at the warmth that had kept him alive through every dark water. You're asking me to give up the only thing that protects me. I'm asking you to trust that you don't need it anymore. Silence. The photographs watched. The woman in white waited. Leo set the bone knife on the floor. The moment it left his hand, the room changed. The photographs began to fade. The walls began to crack. The floor beneath his feet turned to water, not cold, not warm, but the exact temperature of his own skin. Croft smiled. Thank you, Leo, for everything. Then he stepped back and the water rose and Leo was alone. He walked to the glass door. His reflection stared back at him, older than he remembered, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes and a scar on his hand that spelled witness in fading letters. He pushed the door open. The room beyond was not a room. It was a lake, a vast, endless lake stretching in every direction as far as he could see. The water was black and still, reflecting a sky that had no stars, no moon, no sun, just darkness. And at the center of the lake, standing on the water as if it were solid, was the woman. She looked different now, smaller, younger. Her white dress hung loose on a frame that seemed almost fragile. Her black hair was tangled. Her sharp teeth were hidden behind lips that trembled. "You came," she whispered. Leo walked toward her. The water held his weight. "I came to witness you. I don't want to be witnessed anymore. I want to be known." Leo stopped a few feet from her. Up close, he could see that her water eyes were no longer empty. There were faces in them, the faces of everyone she had ever taken. The creeks drowned, the wells forgotten, the quarries missing, the rivers lost. They were all still there, still waiting, still hoping. "Why did you take them?" Leo asked. The woman looked down at her reflection in the water. "Because I was lonely," she said. "And when you're lonely for 1,000,000,000 years, you start to believe that any company is better than none, even company that doesn't know it's keeping you company." She looked up at Leo. Her water eyes were crying, not tears, but tiny drops of light that fell into the black lake and disappeared. "I didn't mean to hurt them. I just wanted someone to see me, someone to say you exist and that matters. Is that so terrible?" Leo thought about the faces he had witnessed. The creek, the well, the quarry, the river. He thought about Clara, who had drowned 12 times, about Rebecca, who had waited 100 years, about Temperance, who had carried the seed for 3 centuries. "No," he said, "it's not terrible, but it's not an excuse either." The woman flinched. "You took people who didn't choose to be taken. You kept them in your water for centuries. You fed on their fear and their hope and their love. You turned loneliness into hunger, and hunger into death." "I know," the woman's voice cracked, the lake rippled, the faces in her eyes screamed silently. "I know what I did, I know I was wrong, but I didn't know how to stop, I didn't know how to be anything else." She reached out her hand, not pale and perfect this time, but small and trembling and human. "Teach me," she whispered, "teach me how to stop." Leo looked at her hand, at the 1,000,000,000-year hunger in her eyes, at the faces of everyone she had ever taken, watching from the darkness. He thought about the bone knife, lying on the floor of the room of photographs. He thought about Croft, who had sacrificed himself to bring Leo here. He thought about the Farrow sisters, safe in Ashford Creek. About Rebecca, growing up in a world that would never know what she had been. And he made a choice. He took her hand. The world exploded into light. When Leo opened his eyes, he was lying on the shore of Stillwater Lake. The sun was rising. The water was blue and clear and ordinary, Birds sang in the trees. Somewhere behind him, a dog barked. Myra Vance knelt beside him, her face wet with tears. "You were gone for 7 hours," she said. "Not 3 days, 7 hours. What happened?" Leo sat up slowly. The bone knife lay beside him, cold, dark, silent, dead as stone. "I witnessed her," he said. "The woman, the first hunger." Leo nodded. He looked at his hand. The scars were gone, not faded, gone. His skin was smooth and unmarked. "What did you see?" Myra asked. Leo looked at the lake, at the water, at the reflection of the sunrise on its surface. "Myself," he said. "She was just a reflection. The first hunger wasn't a monster, it was a mirror. It showed everyone what they were most afraid of, and I was afraid of becoming her." Myra frowned. "I don't understand." Leo stood up. His legs were steady. His heart was calm. The creek wasn't a place. The well wasn't a door. The hunger wasn't a thing. It was a question. The same question every soul asks when it's alone long enough. Does anyone see me? Does anyone care? Does anyone remember? He picked up the bone knife. It didn't hum. It didn't glow. It was just a bone, old and brittle and ordinary. "She's not gone," Leo said. "She's sleeping, because someone finally answered her question. Someone witnessed her. Someone remembered. That's all she ever wanted." Myra was quiet for a long moment. "So what happens now?" Leo looked at the knife, at the lake, at the town of Stillwater, waking up to an ordinary morning. "Now I go home," he said. "For the first time in 2 years, I go home." He walked toward his truck. The sun was warm on his face. The birds were singing. Behind him, the lake sparkled, clear and beautiful, and finally at peace. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3. The Road Home. The drive from Stillwater to Ashford Creek should have taken 16 hours. Leo took 4 days. Not because he was lost, not because the truck broke down. He took 4 days because he kept pulling over. Rest stops, gas stations, the edge of a cornfield in Iowa where the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple that made his chest ache. He had forgotten what beauty felt like. For 2 years, every sunset had been a warning. Every body of water had been a threat. Every quiet moment had been interrupted by whispers and humming, and the cold grip of something hungry reaching for him from the dark. But the bone knife was silent now. The scars on his hand were gone. The faces behind his eyes, the creeks drowned, the wells forgotten, the quarries lost, had faded to memories. Gentle memories, the kind that didn't wake you screaming. He slept in the truck for the first 2 nights. A rest stop in Nebraska, a church parking lot in Missouri. No dreams, no water, no women in white dresses reaching for him from the dark. On the 3rd night, he checked into a motel. The kind with flickering neon signs and thin pillows and coffee that tasted like rust. He took a long shower, longer than he needed, and stood under the hot water until his skin turned red. Then he sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a towel, and looked at the bone knife. It lay on the nightstand beside the lamp, ordinary, dead, a piece of bone carved with symbols he no longer understood. He picked it up, turned it over. The blade was cold, not the cold of the creek or the well or the quarry, just cold. The cold of something that had once been alive and was now just a thing. Leo set it back down. He didn't need it anymore. That was what Croft had said. That was what the woman had shown him. The knife had never been the weapon. He had been the weapon. The knife was just a reminder. He lay down and closed his eyes. For the first time in 2 years, he slept through the night. He arrived in Ashford Creek at noon on the 4th day. The town looked the same. The courthouse clock tower, the diner, the library, no longer a library, he noticed, but a bookstore with a bright blue sign that read Farrow & Co., Clara's bookstore. He had seen photographs on his phone, but photographs didn't capture the way the sunlight hit the windows or the way the wind moved through the trees along Maple Lane. He parked the truck outside the Farrow house. The blue craftsman with the porch swing and the garden full of roses, not dying anymore, he noticed. Blooming, red and pink and white, heavy with the weight of late summer. The front door opened before he knocked. Elias Farrow stood in the doorway, her hand over her mouth, her eyes already spilling tears. "Leo," she whispered. Then she grabbed him and held on like she had been waiting for this moment for 2 years. Because she had. Clara came running from the backyard. She had been gardening, dirt on her jeans, a smudge of soil on her cheek, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She stopped when she saw him. Her face went through a series of expressions: shock, disbelief, joy, grief, and then something softer, something like peace. "You're alive," she said. "I'm alive." The knife, the witnessing, the woman. Croft told us, before he disappeared, he told us you had gone somewhere you might not come back from. Leo nodded. I came back." Clara stepped closer. She looked at his hand, the hand that had worn the witness scars for so long, the hand that was smooth and unmarked. "It's over," she said, not a question. "It's over." She hugged him then, tighter than Elias had. When she pulled back, her face was wet. "Stay," she said. "Please, just stay." Leo looked past her through the open door into the house. He saw photographs on the wall: Clara and Elias, Rebecca Thorne at her high school graduation. She had aged normally, miraculously, mercifully. A framed picture of the creek at sunrise. Peaceful, ordinary. "I'll stay," Leo said, "for a while." It was the first promise he had made in 2 years that he knew he could keep. That night they sat on the porch swing. The three of them, Leo, Clara, Elias, watching the stars come out over Ashford Creek. The air was warm and soft, carrying the smell of roses and cut grass and something else. Something Leo had forgotten. "Home." "What happened at Stillwater?" Clara asked. "Really happened. Not the version you tell the police or the version you write in a report. The real version." Leo was quiet for a long moment. The porch swing creaked. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. "The woman, the first hunger, she wasn't a monster," Leo said finally. "She was a reflection. A billion years of loneliness, reflected back at everyone who looked into her water. She took people because she didn't know how to ask them to stay." "But you asked her to stop." "No, I witnessed her, I saw her. I told her she existed and that mattered. That's all she ever wanted. That's all any of them wanted. The creek, the well, the quarry, every drowning victim I ever witnessed. They just wanted someone to know they had been alive." Clara reached over and took his hand. Her fingers were warm. "And now?" Leo looked at the stars, at the creek glittering in the moonlight, at the town that had almost swallowed him whole. "Now she's sleeping. The hunger is gone. The water is just water, but the memory, the witnessing, that stays. It has to stay. Because if we forget, the hunger comes back. Not the same hunger, a new one, and someone else has to witness it." Elias leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. "So you're saying this isn't over, that there will be other creeks, other wells, other hungers?" Leo nodded slowly. "There are always other hungers. The world is full of lonely things that want to be seen, but not all of them are in the water. Some are in the forest. Some are in the sky. Some are in the hearts of people who have been forgotten for too long." He looked at the bone knife sitting on the porch railing, dark, silent, ordinary. "I'm not the only witness anymore," Leo said, "and I don't need to be. Clara, you witnessed the creek. Elias, you witnessed the library. Rebecca witnessed herself. The woman in Stillwater witnessed her own reflection. We're all witnesses. We all carry the faces of the people we've loved and lost and remembered." Clara squeezed his hand. "That sounds like a good thing," she said. Leo smiled. It was the first real smile he had smiled in 2 years. "It is," he said. "It's the best thing." The next morning, Leo walked to the creek. The sun was just rising, painting the water in shades of gold and pink and soft blue. The bridge was empty. The path was quiet. A heron stood at the water's edge, motionless, watching for fish. Leo sat on the bank and dipped his fingers into the water. Cold, clean, ordinary. No whispers, no humming, no faces reaching up from the depths. He stayed there for an hour, just watching the water flow. The current was gentle, patient, carrying leaves and twigs and sunlight downstream toward somewhere else. Somewhere behind him, footsteps. "I thought I'd find you here." Rebecca Thorne stood at the edge of the path, her hands in the pockets of her jeans. She was 17 now, or she looked 17 anyway. The doctors still didn't understand why a girl who had spent 100 years underwater had aged normally once she was rescued. But Rebecca didn't ask questions. She had stopped asking questions a long time ago. "Hey, Beck," Leo said. She sat down beside him. Close, but not too close. They had a comfortable distance now, the distance between two people who had seen the same nightmare and survived it. "I heard you came back," Rebecca said. "I came back. Are you staying?" Leo looked at the creek, at the water, at the heron still waiting for its breakfast. "For now," he said, "maybe longer." Rebecca nodded. She picked up a small stone and skipped it across the water, once, twice, 3 times before it sank. "The woman at Stillwater," Rebecca said. "She was like me, wasn't she? Alone, scared, not understanding why everyone kept leaving." Leo turned to look at her. Her face was calm, but her eyes were old, older than 17, older than 100. "She was like you," Leo said. "But she didn't have a Clara, she didn't have a Leo. She didn't have anyone to hold her hand and tell her it was okay to let go." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned her head against Leo's shoulder. "I'm glad you came back," she whispered. Leo put his arm around her. "Me too," he said. That afternoon, Leo visited the bookstore. Farrow & Co. was bright and warm, with wooden shelves and cozy armchairs and a cat, a fat orange tabby named Thomas, sleeping on the counter. Clara was behind the register, ringing up a customer. When she saw Leo, she smiled. "First time in a bookstore in 2 years. First time in any building that isn't a motel or a diner in 2 years." Clara laughed. "Then welcome to the civilized world." Leo wandered through the shelves. Mystery, horror, biography, poetry. A whole section dedicated to books about water, myths, legends, folklore. Clara had arranged them carefully, alphabetically, with little handwritten notes taped to the shelves. "The Mississippi has drowned more people than any war." In Norse mythology, water is the boundary between the living and the dead. Some scientists believe water can remember. What does your water remember? Leo stopped at the last note. He touched the paper. Clara had written it in blue ink, her handwriting neat and careful. "Ashford Creek remembers, but now it sleeps, and we let it rest." "You wrote that," Leo said. Clara came to stand beside him. "The night after you left, I couldn't sleep, so I came here and wrote notes for every book in the store. That one just came out. It's beautiful. It's true." They stood in silence for a moment. The cat purred. The afternoon sunlight slanted through the windows. "I'm going to be okay, Leo," Clara said quietly. "I know you worry about me, about Rebecca, about Alina, about the town, but we're all going to be okay because you witnessed us, because you remembered us, because you came back." Leo looked at her dark hair, at the birthmark above her left eyebrow, at the face of a woman who had drowned 12 times and still chosen to live. "I know," he said. "That's why I came back." At sunset, Leo stood on the bridge alone. The heron had flown away. The fish had stopped jumping. The creek was dark and smooth, reflecting the first stars. He thought about the woman in Stillwater, about her billion years of loneliness, about the faces in her eyes, the thousands of souls she had taken, not out of malice but out of desperation. He thought about Croft, somewhere in the darkness between worlds, waiting. He thought about the bone knife, sitting on the porch railing at the Farrow house, a relic of a war he had finally stopped fighting. And he thought about what came next. The world was full of lonely things, full of forgotten souls and ancient hungers and waters that remembered too much. He couldn't witness all of them. He couldn't save everyone. But he could witness this moment, this creek, this town, this peace. Leo put his hands on the bridge railing and leaned forward, looking down at his own reflection in the dark water. He was older now, thinner. The scar on his hand was gone, but something else had taken its place, a softness around his eyes, a stillness in his chest, a quiet that didn't come from fear. He had witnessed the hunger, he had witnessed the reflection, he had witnessed himself. And for the first time in 2 years, Leo Hargrave was not afraid of the water. He was grateful for it. That night he dreamed. Not of drowning, not of faces, not of cold hands reaching up from the dark. He dreamed of a woman in white standing at the edge of a vast and endless lake. Her hair was black, her eyes were water, but she was not reaching for him. She was not hungry. She was smiling. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me." Leo smiled back. "Thank you for letting me." Then the dream faded, and the water was still, and the woman was gone. And Leo slept. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4, The New Witness. 3 weeks passed like honey, slow, golden sweet. Leo fell into a routine he hadn't known he was capable of. Wake at dawn, walk to the creek, sit on the bank and watch the water flow. Breakfast at the diner, 2 eggs, toast, coffee that was still terrible but now felt like a comfort instead of an insult. Then the bookstore, where he helped Clara rearrange shelves and unpack boxes and chase Thomas the cat off the counter. In the afternoons, he walked through the town, Maple Lane, the courthouse, the library-turned-bookstore, the bridge, the creek, the same streets he had walked as sheriff but different now. Lighter. The weight of 12 years of waiting for something terrible to happen had finally lifted. In the evenings, he sat on the Farrow's porch swing with Clara and Alina and Rebecca, watching the stars come out, listening to the crickets sing. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. The silence was comfortable now, not the silence of dread, but the silence of peace. Leo had almost forgotten what peace felt like. Almost. It was a Tuesday when the letter arrived. No stamp, no return address. Just his name, Leo Hargrave, written in careful black ink on a plain white envelope. Alina found it tucked under the windshield wiper of his truck. "Someone was here last night," she said, handing it to him. "I didn't hear anything, neither did Clara." Leo turned the envelope over. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind used by lawyers and academics and people who wanted their words to last. He opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and on that paper a single sentence. "The river in Maine is singing again. You know where to find me." No signature, no date, no explanation. But Leo knew. Elias Croft was alive. "He can't be alive," Clara said. They were sitting in the bookstore, the letter spread on the counter between them. Thomas, the cat, sniffed it, decided it wasn't food, and went back to sleep. "You said he walked into the lake. You said the woman took him." "She did take him," Leo said, "but I witnessed her, I set her free. Maybe that freed him too." Clara frowned. "That doesn't make sense. The woman was the hunger. If you witnessed her, if you set her free, then everything connected to her should have been released. Not just Croft, everyone, all the souls she ever took." Leo looked at the letter, at the careful black ink, at the familiar handwriting, Croft's handwriting, unmistakable after 2 years of reading his notes and maps and cryptic warnings. "Maybe they were released," Leo said quietly, "but maybe some of them chose to come back." Clara stared at him. "You think Croft chose to come back, from wherever the woman sent him, from death?" Leo folded the letter and tucked it into his pocket. "Croft has been chasing the hunger for 30 years. He opened the door to the first lake because he wanted to understand it, to document it, to witness it. Maybe when the woman was freed, he was given a choice: stay in whatever comes after death, or come back and keep witnessing. That's not a choice, Clara said. That's a curse. Leo smiled, a small, sad smile. That's what I thought too, until I realized that witnessing isn't a curse. It's a responsibility. Someone has to remember the forgotten. Someone has to see the unseen. If not me, then who? If not Croft, then who? Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached across the counter and took his hand. "You're not going alone," she said. Leo shook his head. "Clara." "I'm not asking, Leo. I'm telling you. I've drowned 12 times. I've been reincarnated more times than anyone should have to. I've seen the creek from the inside. If there's a river in Maine that's singing again, I'm going with you." Leo looked at her dark eyes, at the birthmark above her left eyebrow, at the stubborn set of her jaw that he had come to know so well. "Eleanor will kill me," he said. Clara laughed. "Eleanor will try, but she'll understand. She always understands." They left 3 days later. The truck was packed: clothes, food, maps, a tent, and the bone knife, which Leo had wrapped in cloth and tucked behind the passenger seat. It was still dark, still silent, but he couldn't leave it behind. It was part of him now. Eleanor stood on the porch, her arms crossed, her face a careful mask of calm. 3 weeks, she said. "You have 3 weeks, then I'm coming after you." Clara hugged her sister, long and hard. When she pulled back, both of them were crying. "I'll be careful," Clara said. "You'd better." Leo nodded at Eleanor. She nodded back. No words were needed. They drove north. Maine was green and wet, and older than anything Leo had ever seen. The trees were thick, the roads were narrow, and the air smelled of pine and salt and something else, something ancient that had been sleeping in the soil for thousands of years. The river Croft had mentioned wasn't on any map Leo could find. No name, no markers, just coordinates, longitude and latitude, scratched on the back of the letter in Croft's messy handwriting. They found it on the 2nd day. The river was wide and slow, brown with tannins from the surrounding pines. It didn't look like a river that sang. It looked ordinary, forgettable, the kind of river you drove past without a second glance. But Leo felt it the moment he stepped out of the truck. The humming. Not loud, not the desperate, hungry humming of Ashford Creek or the cold, ancient humming of Stillwater Lake. This was softer, sadder, a lullaby played on a broken instrument. "You hear that?" Clara asked. Leo nodded. The bone knife was warm against his hip, not glowing but alive, awake. "This is different," Leo said. "The creek was hungry, the well was patient, the quarry was angry, the lake was lonely, but this river—" He paused, listening. The humming rose and fell like breathing. "This river is grieving." They set up camp a 1/4 mile from the riverbank. Leo built a fire while Clara unpacked the food and the blankets and the small recording device she had brought to document everything. "You're recording this," Leo said. "Someone has to." Croft documented everything. "If we're going to be witnesses, we need to leave a record for the next witness." Leo didn't argue. She was right. That night they sat by the fire and listened to the river sing. The humming was clearer now, almost melodic, rising out of the dark water like steam from hot pavement. "It sounds like a woman," Clara said. "An old woman, someone who lost something she can never get back." Leo nodded. "What did Croft say in the letter? The river in Maine is singing again. That means it stopped singing at some point. Something made it quiet, and now something has made it wake up." Clara hugged her knees to her chest. "Do you think it's another hunger, another seed?" Leo thought about the woman in Stillwater, about her billion years of loneliness, about the faces in her eyes, the thousands of souls she had taken, not out of malice but out of desperation. "I think it's something older," Leo said, "something even the first hunger was afraid of." The first hunger was afraid of something. Leo looked at the river, at the dark water, at the stars reflected on its surface, trembling with each note of the sad, broken lullaby. Everyone is afraid of something, Clara, even billion-year-old hungers, especially them. The next morning, they walked to the river. The sun was just rising, painting the water in shades of gold and pink and soft brown. The humming had faded with the darkness, quieter now, almost inaudible, like a heartbeat barely strong enough to feel. Leo knelt at the water's edge and dipped his fingers into the river. Cold, clean, but not ordinary. The water was full of something, not faces, not hands, something smaller, something Leo had to squint to see. "Clara," he said, "look." She knelt beside him and peered into the water. The surface was clear, but beneath it thousands of tiny lights drifted with the current. Not fish, not reflections, lights, soft and white and pulsing like fireflies underwater. "What are they?" Clara whispered. Leo didn't answer. He reached into the water and let the lights flow over his hand. The moment they touched his skin, he saw. Not memories, not faces, not drowning. He saw moments, tiny, ordinary moments that should have been forgotten but had somehow been preserved in the water. A child's first step, a grandmother's last breath, a kiss on a porch swing, a letter folded and tucked into a drawer and never sent, a dog barking at the moon, a baby laughing at nothing. The river wasn't holding souls, it was holding moments. Billions of moments, stretching back thousands of years, preserved in the water like photographs in an old album. "What is this place?" Clara asked. Leo pulled his hand from the water. The lights clung to his fingers for a moment, then drifted away. "A library," he said quietly. "Not like your bookstore, not like Martha's basement. A library of moments. Every happy memory, every sad goodbye, every ordinary Tuesday that should have been forgotten but wasn't. The river remembers everything." Clara stared at the water, at the thousands of tiny lights, at the billions of moments drifting past them. "Who put them here?" Leo stood up. The bone knife was warm against his hip, not warning, not celebrating, just acknowledging. "Maybe no one. Maybe the river just collects, like the creek collected drowning victims, like the well collected forgotten souls, like the lake collected loneliness. Different water, different hunger, different purpose." He looked upstream, where the river curved into a dense forest of pines and shadows. "Croft is here," Leo said. "I can feel him. He's not in the water, he's beyond it, somewhere the river leads to." Clara stood beside him. "Then let's go find him." They walked along the riverbank, following the curve of the water into the trees. The humming grew louder with each step, not the sad lullaby of the open river, but something deeper, something older, something that sounded impossibly like a voice. They found the cabin at noon. It was small and old, built from logs that had turned gray with age. A chimney stood at one end, smokeless. The windows were dark, the door was closed. But someone had been there recently. Fresh footprints in the mud, a half-empty cup of coffee on the porch railing, a book open face down on a wooden chair. Leo approached slowly, the bone knife in his hand. Clara stayed close behind him. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open. Inside, the cabin was warm. A fire burned in the hearth. Books lined the walls, hundreds of them, thousands of them, stacked on shelves and piled on tables and spilling across the floor. Maps covered every available surface. Photographs were pinned to the walls, the ceiling, even the inside of the door. And sitting at a desk in the center of the room, his back to the door, was Elias Croft. He was older than Leo remembered, thinner. His hair had gone completely white, and his hands trembled slightly as he wrote in a leather-bound journal, but he was alive. "Croft," Leo said. The old man didn't turn around. He kept writing. "I knew you would come," Croft said. His voice was different, softer, older, but still familiar. I knew you would feel it. The river's song, the lights in the water, the grief. He set down his pen and turned. His eyes were the same, sharp, intelligent, hungry for understanding. But something else lived behind them now. Something that had seen too much. Something that had been to the other side of the water and come back with scars that didn't show. You witnessed the first hunger, Croft said. You set her free. Do you know what that cost? Leo stepped closer. What did it cost? Croft stood up. He was shorter than Leo remembered, or maybe Leo had grown taller. The witnessing had changed them both. The first hunger wasn't just a hunger, Croft said. She was a gatekeeper. She held back something worse, something that had been waiting for her to fall asleep so it could wake up. He walked to the window and looked out at the river. This river isn't singing because it's happy, Croft said. It's singing because it's trying to warn us. Something is coming, something old, something angry, something that has been waiting for 1 billion years to be witnessed. He turned to face Leo. And it knows your name. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5. The Thing Beneath the River. The cabin fell silent. The fire crackled. The river hummed its sad, broken lullaby. And Leo stood in the center of the room, the bone knife warm in his hand, staring at the man who had just told him that something worse than 1 billion-year-old hunger knew his name. What do you mean it knows my name? Leo asked. Croft walked to the desk and picked up the leather-bound journal. He flipped through pages covered in dense handwriting, sketches, symbols Leo didn't recognize. The first hunger, the woman in white, she was a filter, Croft said. Everything that wanted to come into our world from the place beneath the water had to go through her. She wasn't just lonely. She was a door, and she kept the door closed. Leo frowned. A door to where? Croft opened the journal to a page covered in drawings, shapes that looked like roots, veins, rivers flowing backward, upward, into a sky that was also water. To the place where water goes when it's forgotten, Croft said. Every river that dries up, every lake that gets filled in, every creek that gets paved over, the water doesn't disappear. It goes beneath. It pools in the dark, and over time it remembers. Clara stepped forward, her arms wrapped around herself. Remembers what? Everything, Croft said. Every death, every tear, every prayer whispered into a wishing well, every curse muttered over a leaking faucet. Water remembers everything, Clara. You know that. You've been inside the memory. Clara flinched. She had been inside the creek. She had drowned in its memory 12 times. But the first hunger kept all of that memory contained, Croft continued. She absorbed it, she became it, and as long as she was hungry, the memory stayed with her. But when Leo witnessed her when he set her free, the memory didn't disappear. It went home. He pointed out the window, toward the river. Home is the place beneath, and the thing that lives there, the thing that has been waiting for this memory to return, is waking up. Leo walked to the window. The river was visible through the trees, brown and slow and ordinary, but the humming was louder now, not sad, angry. What is it? Leo asked. The thing beneath. Croft came to stand beside him. The old stories call it the drowning god. Not a god, really, not sentient, more like an echo, an imprint. The first time something drowned, the very first death by water billions of years ago when the oceans were young and the only living things were single cells, that death left a mark, a scar on the water itself. He pressed his palm against the cold glass. That scar has been growing ever since. Every drowning feeds it. Every tear makes it stronger. Every river that dries up and is forgotten adds to its weight. The first hunger kept it in check because she absorbed so much of the memory. But now she's gone, and the drowning god is awake. Leo looked at his hand. The scars were gone. The letters witness had faded from his skin. But he still felt the weight of every face he had ever seen, every soul he had ever witnessed. If this thing is awake, Leo said slowly, why is the river singing? Why isn't it attacking? Why isn't it drowning everyone in sight? Croft smiled, a thin, tired smile. Because it doesn't know how. It's been asleep for billions of years. It's confused. It's hungry, but it doesn't remember how to feed. The singing is its way of reaching out, of testing, of learning. He turned to face Leo. And that's why it knows your name, because you witnessed the first hunger. You touched her memory, and her memory is connected to the drowning god. When you set her free, you left a trace, a fingerprint, and the thing beneath followed that fingerprint back to you. Clara grabbed Leo's arm. Then we need to leave, now, before it finds us. Leo shook his head. It's already found us. Croft said it knows my name. Running won't help. Then what will? Leo looked at the bone knife. It was warm now, not hot, not glowing, but alive, humming, the same frequency as the river. I witnessed the first hunger, Leo said. Maybe I can witness this one too. Croft laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You can't witness a scar, Leo. You can't witness an echo. The drowning god isn't a soul, it isn't a person, it isn't even a thing. It's a wound in the water itself. How do you witness a wound? Leo didn't have an answer. That night they sat around the fire in the cabin's small hearth. Croft had made tea, herbal, bitter, the kind of tea that old men drink when they've given up on sleep. Clara had curled up in a chair with a blanket over her shoulders. Leo sat on the floor, his back against the wall, the bone knife in his lap. Tell me about the first time you saw it, Leo said. The drowning god. Croft was silent for a long moment. The fire crackled, the river hummed. I didn't see it, Croft finally said. I felt it, when I walked into Stillwater Lake, when the first hunger took me. I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to become part of her memory like all the others, but instead she showed me something. He leaned forward, his old hands wrapped around his teacup. She showed me the place beneath, the pool where all the forgotten water goes. It's not dark there, Leo. It's not cold. It's heavy, heavy with memory. Every tear that was ever cried, every scream that was ever swallowed by a wave, every prayer that was ever whispered into a river. It's all there, pressing down, pressing in, pressing under. His hands trembled. And at the center of that pressure, that weight, that endless accumulation of grief, that's where the drowning god lives. Not as a creature, as a presence, as a hunger so old and so vast that it doesn't even know it's hungry anymore. It just is. Leo looked at the bone knife. It had stopped humming. You said it knows my name, Leo said. How does a wound know anything? Croft set down his teacup. Because the first hunger whispered it. Before you witnessed her, before you set her free, she was connected to the drowning god. She was part of it. And when you touched her, when you witnessed her, that connection carried your name down into the dark. The drowning god didn't learn your name. It inherited it. Clara sat up, her face was pale. So Leo is connected to this thing now, permanently. Croft nodded slowly. Until the drowning god is witnessed, or until Leo dies, whichever comes first. The next morning, Leo walked to the river alone. The sun was rising through the pines, casting long shadows across the brown water. The humming was softer now, almost gentle, like a mother singing to a sleeping child. Leo knelt at the water's edge and looked at his reflection. Older, thinner, dark circles under his eyes, but calm. Strange how calm he felt. 2 years ago, the thought of being connected to an ancient hunger would have terrified him. Now it just felt familiar. He dipped his fingers into the river. The lights came again, thousands of tiny, pulsing lights drifting with the current. But this time they didn't just flow over his hand. They gathered, they clung, they formed shapes. A face. Not the first hunger, not the woman in white, someone else, someone older, someone whose face he had never seen but somehow recognized. Leo, the face whispered. Its voice was the sound of water dripping in a dark cave. Leo Hargrave, witness, rememberer, you carry the weight of the drowned. Leo didn't pull his hand away. Who are you? I am what the water became before the first hunger. I am the original wound, the first drowning, the tear that never dried. You call me the drowning god. I am not a god. I am not even alive. I am simply. What happened? The face shifted. The lights rearranged themselves into new shapes. A woman weeping, a child reaching for a hand that wasn't there, a man sinking beneath the waves with his eyes still open. The first hunger kept me asleep. She absorbed my grief. She became my lullaby, but you woke her, you witnessed her, you set her free, and now I am awake. And I am so tired, Leo, so tired of being alone in the dark. Leo felt tears on his cheeks. He hadn't known he was crying. What do you want from me? The face smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was not a cruel smile. It was the smile of something that had been waiting for billions of years to finally be asked that question. I want you to witness me, the drowning god said, not as a hunger, not as a wound, as what I was before the first drowning, as what I could have been if someone had remembered. Leo pulled his hand from the water. The light scattered, drifting downstream, disappearing into the shadows. He stood up, his legs were shaking. Clara was behind him. He hadn't heard her approach. Leo, what happened? Who were you talking to? Leo looked at the river, at the brown water, at the ancient, patient surface that hid a billion years of grief. The drowning god, he said. It wants to be witnessed, not destroyed, not imprisoned, witnessed, like the first hunger, like Rebecca, like all of them. Clara stepped closer. Can you do that? Leo thought about the bone knife, about the scars on his hand, about the faces behind his eyes, the creeks drowned, the wells forgotten, the quarries lost, the rivers memories. I don't know, he said, but I have to try. That afternoon, Croft showed them the cave. It was hidden beneath a waterfall a mile upstream from the cabin, a narrow opening in the rock, half hidden by moss and ferns. The water fell in a silver curtain, loud and cold and relentless. Behind the curtain, darkness. The river flows into this cave, Croft said, shouting to be heard over the falls. And beneath the cave is the place beneath, the pool where the forgotten water goes. That's where the drowning god lives. Leo looked at the dark opening. The bone knife was hot now, almost too hot to touch. It wanted him to go in. You're not coming with me, Leo said, not a question. Croft shook his head. I can't. I've already been. The drowning god knows me, but it doesn't fear me. It fears you, because you're the only one who has ever witnessed something older than itself. Clara grabbed Leo's arm. Then let me come, please. I've drowned 12 times. I know what it feels like to be taken by the water. If the drowning god needs to be witnessed, I can help. Leo looked at her dark eyes, at the birthmark above her left eyebrow, at the face of a woman who had died and been reborn more times than anyone should have to. If I go in there and don't come back, then I'll come in after you, Clara said. That's what witnesses do, Leo. They don't leave each other alone in the dark. Leo smiled. It was a small smile, sad and grateful and terrified all at once. Okay, he said, together. They stepped through the waterfall together. The cold was immediate, not the cold of water, but the cold of absence, the cold of a place where warmth had never been. Leo felt it in his bones, in his teeth, in the roots of his hair. Clara gasped beside him, her hand gripping his so tightly that her nails drew blood. The cave was larger than it looked from outside, much larger. The walls were smooth and black, worn down by centuries of flowing water. The ceiling was lost in shadow. The floor was wet and slick. And at the far end of the cave, where the darkness was thickest, something glowed. Not brightly, softly, the way dying embers glow, pale blue and green and white, shifting and pulsing like a heartbeat. The pool, Leo whispered. They walked toward it. The water rose around their ankles, then their knees, then their waists. But they didn't stop. The glow grew brighter. The air grew heavier. The weight of a billion years of grief pressed down on Leo's chest, making it hard to breathe. Then they reached the edge. The pool was small, no wider than a bathtub, but impossibly deep. Leo couldn't see the bottom. No one could see the bottom. The bottom didn't exist. And floating at the center of the pool, half submerged, half visible, was a face. Not the face from the river, not the first hunger, something older, something that had been drowned before drowning had a name. "You came," the drowning god whispered. Its voice was the cave, its voice was the water, its voice was the silence between heartbeats. Leo raised the bone knife. The blade flared gold, not angry gold, not warm gold, but the gold of ancient things finally being remembered. "I came to witness you," Leo said. "And the girl, she came to witness too." Clara stepped forward. Her hand was still in Leo's. Her voice was steady. "I came to remember," Clara said. "Every drowning, every tear, every prayer whispered into the water, I came to carry it, so you don't have to anymore." The face in the pool smiled. It was the saddest smile Leo had ever seen. "Then witness me," the drowning god said, "and let me finally rest." Leo raised the knife. Clara closed her eyes. And the world went dark. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. The Pool of Forgotten Tears. The darkness did not last. Leo had learned this by now. Darkness was never the end. It was the doorway, the passage, the moment between what was and what would be. He held tight to Clara's hand. Her fingers were cold but still gripping, and he held tight to the bone knife which burned in his palm like a star falling to earth. When the light returned, they were somewhere else. The pool was gone. The cave was gone. The waterfall was gone. Leo stood on a shore, not the shore of a river or a lake or a creek, but the shore of something larger. Something that had no opposite bank, no end, no horizon. An ocean of memory. The water was black but not empty. It was full of lights, the same tiny, pulsing lights he had seen in the river, but thousands of them. Millions, billions, each light a moment, a tear, a prayer, a drowning. "This is where it all goes," Clara whispered beside him. Her voice was awed, not afraid. "Every drop of grief that ever fell into water, every scream that was swallowed by a wave, every child who slipped beneath the surface and never came back up." Leo looked down at his feet. He was standing on the water, not sinking, not floating, standing as if the surface were glass. "The drowning god brought us here," Leo said, "to witness, to remember, to carry." Clara turned to face him. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "Then let's start." They walked across the water together. The ocean of memory stretched in every direction, endless and deep. But beneath the surface, Leo could see shapes, faces, hands, bodies, all suspended in the black water, all waiting. Not drowning, not struggling, just waiting. The way Rebecca had waited in the creek. The way the forgotten had waited in the well. The first face rose to meet him. A woman, young, dressed in clothes from another century, a long dress, a bonnet, her hands folded in her lap. Her eyes were closed, but when Leo stopped in front of her, they opened. "You came," she whispered. Her voice was thin, distant, like a radio signal from a dying star. Leo knelt on the water. "What's your name?" Sarah Whitfield. I drowned in 1847. The river took me while I was washing clothes. My children were watching from the bank. They screamed for help, but no one came. I watched them watch me die." Leo felt the weight of her memory settle on his chest. Not heavy, not painful, just present. A stone placed carefully on a scale. "I see you, Sarah Whitfield," Leo said. "I remember you, you existed, you mattered." Sarah smiled. Her face grew brighter, the lights around her pulsed, then dimmed, then went still. She closed her eyes, and slowly, gently, she sank back beneath the surface. She was gone, but not forgotten. Clara had found another face. A child, a boy, no older than 7, in short pants and a cap. His eyes were wide and terrified. "I fell through the ice," the boy whispered. "In 1922, the lake froze over and I was skating and the ice broke. My friends ran away. They were scared. No one came back for me. Clara knelt beside him. I came back, she said. I'm here now. What's your name? Thomas Grady. I see you, Thomas Grady. I remember you. You existed. You mattered. Thomas smiled. His face brightened. The lights around him pulsed, dimmed, went still. He sank beneath the surface. Leo found another, and another, and another. Hours passed, or days, or years. Time had no meaning in the ocean of memory. Leo walked and knelt and witnessed. Clara walked and knelt and witnessed beside him. They spoke names that had not been spoken in centuries. They remembered faces that had been forgotten for generations. Mary Chen, drowned 1889, the ferry capsized. She was holding her mother's hand when the water took her. James O'Malley, drowned 1923, fell off a fishing boat. No one saw him go under. Delia Redbone, drowned 1956. Her husband pushed her. They said it was an accident. She knew it wasn't. Samuel Crow, drowned 1967. He was 7 years old. He was looking for his dog. Anita Sharma, drowned 1981. She couldn't swim. Her friends dared her to go into the river. She never came out. Marcus Webb, drowned 2024. He was 11 years old. He was fishing with his grandfather. Leo stopped at that last name. Marcus Webb, the boy from the quarry. The boy Leo had pulled from the water with his own hands, wrapped in his own jacket, carried to safety. But here in the ocean of memory, Marcus was still drowning. You saved me, Marcus whispered. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, but he was smiling. You pulled me out. You gave me your jacket. You told me I was going to be okay. Leo nodded. His throat was tight. But I'm still here, Marcus said. Part of me. The part that drowned before you pulled me out. The part that remembers what it felt like to go under and not come back up. That part never left. Leo reached out and placed his hand on Marcus's cheek. The boy's skin was cold, the cold of deep water, the cold of a place where the sun never reached. I see you, Marcus Webb, Leo said. I remember you. You existed. You mattered. And the part of you that drowned, that part matters too. Marcus's face brightened. The lights around him pulsed, dimmed, went still. He closed his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. Then he sank beneath the surface. Leo stood up. His legs were shaking. His chest ached. Clara was beside him, her face streaked with tears. How many? She asked. Leo looked out at the ocean, at the billions of lights still waiting beneath the surface, at the faces still pressing up against the dark, hoping to be seen. Too many, he said, not enough. They witnessed for what felt like forever. But forever, Leo knew, was a lie. The drowning god had brought them here for a reason, not to witness every single soul. That would take more than a lifetime, more than 100 lifetimes. They were here to witness the wound itself, the original drowning, the first tear. And finally, after what felt like years, they found it. The center of the ocean. The water was different here, darker, thicker, not water anymore, but something else, something that had been water once, before grief had pressed it into something harder and heavier and colder. Leo had to push against it to move forward, as if walking through honey or tar. Clara struggled beside him. Leo, I can't, it's too heavy. Almost there, Leo said. Hold on. The bone knife burned in his hand, not gold now but white, the white of a star collapsing into itself. It was guiding him, pulling him. He followed. And then they reached it. The center of the wound. Not a face, not a body, not a shape that Leo could recognize. It was simply a tear, a single drop of water floating in the darkness, pulsing with a light that was older than the sun. This was the first drowning, the original death by water. Billions of years ago, when the oceans were young and the only living things were single cells, something had died in the water. A creature so small and so ancient that it had no name, no face, no memory. But it had felt fear. It had felt pain. It had felt the cold closing over it, and in that moment it had left a mark on the water itself. A scar. A wound. The drowning god. "Witness me," the tear whispered, not with a voice, with a feeling, a pressure against Leo's chest, against his mind, against his soul. "Witness me so I can finally dry." Leo raised the bone knife. The white light blazed. Clara reached out and placed her hand over his. "Together," she said. "Together." They brought the knife down. Not cutting, not stabbing, touching. The blade touched the tear, the first drowning, the original wound, the billion-year-old grief, and the world exploded. Leo saw everything. Not the faces he had witnessed, not the memories he had carried. He saw the beginning, the first living thing that had ever died in water. A tiny organism, no bigger than a speck of dust, floating in a shallow pool beneath a sky that was still forming. It had no brain, no heart, no eyes, but it had something, a spark, a will, a desperate need to continue. And then the water changed. A wave, a current, a shift in temperature that it could not survive. The spark flickered, the will faded, the light went out. And in that moment something new was born. Not life, not death, something in between, a memory of dying. A scar on the water that would grow with every drowning, every tear, every prayer whispered into the deep. The drowning god. Leo felt it all. The billions of years of waiting, the endless accumulation of grief, the slow, terrible realization that the wound would never heal because no one remembered the first tear. Until now. "I remember," Leo whispered. "I see you, I witness you, you existed, you mattered." The tear pulsed, once, twice, 3 times. Then it went still. The light faded, the pressure lifted. The weight that had been pressing on Leo's chest for 2 years, the weight of every face he had ever witnessed, every soul he had ever carried, dissolved. Not gone, not forgotten, just lighter. The drowning god was not destroyed, it was witnessed, it was remembered, it was no longer alone. And for the first time in billions of years, the scar on the water began to heal. Leo opened his eyes. He was lying on the floor of the cave, his head in Clara's lap. The pool was empty, no glow, no face, no tear, just water, clear and clean and ordinary. "Leo," Clara's voice was hoarse. "Leo, can you hear me?" He sat up slowly. His body ached, but the ache was familiar. The ache of having done something hard and necessary. "I'm here," he said. "I'm okay." Clara laughed, a wet, shaky laugh, and hugged him so tightly that he couldn't breathe. "You were gone for 3 days," she said. 3 days, Leo. I thought you weren't coming back." 3 days. It had felt like years, like centuries, like a billion years of grief pressing down on his chest. But he had come back. He always came back. They crawled out of the cave together, through the waterfall, into the sunlight. Croft was waiting on the riverbank, sitting on a log, his journal open in his lap. When he saw them, he closed the book and stood up. His face was unreadable. "Well?" he asked. Leo looked at the river, the brown water, the pines, the sky blue and endless and ordinary. "It's healed," Leo said. "Not gone, healed. The drowning god is still there, the scar will always be there, but it's not hungry anymore, it's just a scar, a reminder, of the first drowning, of every drowning after." Croft nodded slowly. "And you, are you healed?" Leo looked at his hand. The scars were gone. The letter's witness had faded from his skin months ago, but he still felt the weight, not heavy now, just present, the weight of having seen, the weight of having remembered. "I'm learning," Leo said. "That's the best I can do." Croft smiled, a real smile, warm and tired and full of something that looked like hope. "That's the best any of us can do." That night they built a fire on the riverbank. Croft made tea. Clara roasted marshmallows. She had brought a bag from Ashford Creek, tucked into her backpack alongside her recording device and her extra socks. Leo sat on a log and watched the flames dance. "The river has stopped singing," Clara said. Leo listened. She was right. The humming was gone. The water flowed in silence, ordinary and peaceful. "It doesn't need to sing anymore," Leo said. "It was singing for the drowning god, trying to wake it up, trying to get someone's attention. But the drowning god isn't sleeping now. It's healing. It doesn't need the song." Croft handed Leo a cup of tea. "What about you? Do you need anything?" Leo thought about it, about the creek, the well, the quarry, the lake, the river, about the faces he had witnessed, the names he had spoken, the grief he had carried. "I need to go home," Leo said, "to Ashford Creek, to the Farrow house, to the porch swing and the roses and the fat orange cat who sleeps on the bookstore counter." Clara smiled. "Thomas the cat will be happy to see you. He's been sleeping on your side of the bed." Leo raised an eyebrow. "I don't have a side of the bed." "You do now. Elena moved your stuff into the spare room. She said you needed a place to stay that wasn't a motel or a truck." Leo felt something warm spread through his chest, not the warmth of the bone knife, not the warmth of witnessing, just warmth, the warmth of being wanted. "I'd like that," he said. "I'd like that a lot." The next morning they drove south. Croft stayed at the cabin. He said he had more research to do, more rivers to trace, more legends to document. But Leo saw the way he looked at the water, the way his hands trembled, the way his eyes seemed older than they had been just days before. "The witnessing took something from him," Clara said as they drove through the Maine forest. "Not his life, his peace. He'll never be able to stop now. He'll always be chasing the next river, the next lake, the next forgotten pool." Leo nodded. "That's what witnesses do. We chase, we remember, we carry until we can't anymore." And then Leo looked out the window at the trees, the sky, the occasional glimpse of water between the trunks. "And then we pass it on." They arrived in Ashford Creek on a Thursday. Elena was waiting on the porch. So was Rebecca. So was Thomas the cat, who jumped off the railing and wound himself around Leo's ankles as soon as Leo stepped out of the truck. "You're late," Elena said, but she was smiling. "We took the scenic route," Clara said. Elena hugged her sister. Then she hugged Leo. Then she stood back and looked at them both, at the exhaustion in their faces, the peace in their eyes, the quiet understanding that passed between them. "Is it over?" Elena asked. Leo looked at the creek, glittering in the afternoon sun, at the bookstore with its bright blue sign, at the town that had almost swallowed him whole and had somehow, impossibly, become his home. "It's over," Leo said, "for now." He walked to the porch and sat down on the swing. Thomas jumped into his lap. Rebecca sat beside him. Clara and Elena went inside to make dinner. And Leo watched the sun set over Ashford Creek. The water was still, the sky was gold, and somewhere in a place beneath the world, a billion-year-old scar was finally healing. He had witnessed it. He had remembered it. And now at last he could rest. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7. The Weight of Ordinary Days. The first month after Maine was the hardest. Not because anything terrible happened. Nothing terrible happened. The creek was quiet. The town was peaceful. The sky was blue, the roses were blooming, and Thomas the cat had finally stopped hissing at Leo every time he walked through the door. That was the problem. Leo had spent 2 years waiting for the next horror, the next hunger, the next dark water that needed a witness. His body had forgotten how to be still. His mind had forgotten how to be quiet. At night, he lay awake in the spare room of the Farrow house, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. Silence had once terrified him. Now it felt like an accusation. "You're not doing anything," the silence seemed to say. "You're not witnessing. You're not saving. You're just sitting." On the 15th night, Clara found him on the porch swing at 3 a.m. "It's the quiet, isn't it?" she said, sitting down beside him. "The quiet is worse than the screaming." Leo nodded. He didn't trust his voice. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. After the creek, after I came back the last time, I couldn't sleep for months. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the faces. Not the drowned ones, the living ones. Eleanor, Rebecca, you. I was terrified that I would wake up and find out that none of it was real, that I was still underwater, still drowning, still dreaming. Leo put his arm around her. How did you make it stop? I didn't. I just learned to live with it. The fear never goes away, Leo. The weight never lifts. You just get stronger, strong enough to carry it without breaking. They sat in silence for a while. The stars were bright. The crickets were loud. Somewhere in the distance, the creek flowed quietly as it had for centuries, as it would for centuries more. I don't know who I am anymore, Leo said. For 2 years I was the witness. That was my job, my purpose, my identity. Now the witnessing is over and I don't know what's left. Clara lifted her head and looked at him. Her eyes were soft. You're Leo Hargrave, she said. You're the man who walked into a creek at midnight and came back with a girl in his arms. You're the man who witnessed a billion-year-old hunger and taught it how to rest. You're the man who sits on this porch swing at 3 a.m. because he's too afraid to sleep, but he's too brave to run away. She took his hand. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. The witnessing didn't make you. It just showed you what was already there. Leo looked at their intertwined fingers, at the faded scars on his hand, the ones that had spelled witness, now just thin white lines that caught the moonlight. What if that's not enough? He whispered. What if being Leo Hargrave isn't enough? Clara squeezed his hand. Then you become someone else. That's the thing about witnesses, Leo. We're not static. We grow. We change. We learn. The man who walked into the creek isn't the same man who walked out of the cave in Maine. And the man who walked out of the cave isn't the same man sitting on this porch swing right now. She smiled. You're not done becoming, Leo. None of us are. The next morning, Leo woke to sunlight and the smell of pancakes. Eleanor was in the kitchen flipping batter, singing along to an old country song on the radio. Rebecca was at the table, doing homework, her tongue poking out in concentration. Thomas, the cat, was curled up on the windowsill, basking in the warmth. For a moment, Leo just stood in the doorway and watched. Ordinary, that was the word for it. Ordinary morning, ordinary kitchen, ordinary people doing ordinary things. 2 years ago, he would have hated ordinary. He had spent his whole life running from it, first as a sheriff in a town with no crime, then as a witness in a world full of horrors. Ordinary had felt like failure, like surrender. Now it felt like a gift. Stop lurking and sit down, Eleanor said without turning around. Pancakes are almost ready. Leo sat. Rebecca pushed a glass of orange juice toward him without looking up from her homework. Thomas opened one eye, decided Leo wasn't interesting, and went back to sleep. This was peace, not the dramatic, cinematic peace of a battle won and a villain defeated. The quiet, unremarkable peace of Tuesday mornings and pancakes and cats who didn't care that you had witnessed a billion-year-old hunger. Leo picked up his fork. Thank you, he said. Eleanor looked at him. So did Rebecca. So did Clara, who had just walked in wearing her bathrobe and looking like she hadn't slept. For what? Eleanor asked. Leo looked around the kitchen, at the worn linoleum floor, at the chipped mugs, at the photograph on the wall, Clara and Eleanor at Rebecca's high school graduation, all three of them smiling, alive together. For this, Leo said, for ordinary. Eleanor's eyes softened. She set the spatula down and walked over to him. She put her hand on his cheek. You earned it, she said. Now eat your pancakes. The weeks passed. Leo fell into a rhythm. Morning walks to the creek, breakfast at the diner, afternoons at the bookstore, helping Clara unpack boxes and alphabetize shelves and chase Thomas off the counter. Evenings on the porch swing, watching the stars come out. He didn't forget the faces. He didn't forget the names. Sarah Whitfield and Thomas Grady and Mary Chen and James O'Malley and Delia Redbone and Samuel Crow and Anita Sharma and Marcus Webb. They lived behind his eyes as they always would, but the weight was lighter now, bearable. He thought about the drowning god sometimes, the scar on the water, the first tear. He wondered if it was still healing. He wondered if it would ever fully heal. Probably not, he decided. Some wounds never fully heal. They just stop hurting as much. They just become part of you. Like the faces, like the names, like the witnessing. On the first day of October, a letter arrived. It was tucked under the windshield wiper of Leo's truck, just like the last one. Plain white envelope. No stamp. No return address. His name written in careful black ink. Leo's heart rate quickened. The old fear, the old hunger stirred in his chest, but he pushed it down. He opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph. An old one, black and white, faded at the edges. It showed a river, not the river in Maine, but a different river, wider and slower, winding through a landscape of flat fields and distant silos. In the foreground, a group of children stood at the water's edge, their backs to the camera. And in the water, reflected upside down, was a face. Not blurred, not hidden, clear as day. A woman's face, young and beautiful and terribly sad. On the back of the photograph, in Croft's familiar handwriting, "The river in Iowa remembers her. She's been waiting for a witness for 100 years. I'll be at the bridge at midnight on the 15th. Come if you're ready. Stay if you're not." Leo stared at the photograph, at the woman's face, at the children, oblivious to the reflection behind them. The old hunger stirred again. Not his hunger, the witness's hunger. The need to see, to remember, to carry. "Is it another one?" Clara stood behind him. She had come out of the bookstore without him noticing. Leo handed her the photograph. "Iowa," Clara said, studying it. "A river, a woman, 100 years of waiting." She looked up at him. "You're going to go?" It wasn't a question. Leo folded the photograph and tucked it into his pocket. The bone knife was in the truck, wrapped in cloth, silent and dark, but he could feel it, waiting, like the woman in the water, like Croft at the bridge. "I'm going to go," Leo said, "but not alone." Clara smiled. "I know." That night they sat on the porch swing and told Eleanor. She didn't cry, she didn't argue. She just sat very still, her hands folded in her lap, her face carefully blank. "I knew this would happen," Eleanor said. "I've known since the day Leo drove back into town. He's not the kind of man who stays. He's the kind of man who witnesses." Leo opened his mouth to speak, but Eleanor held up her hand. "I'm not angry, I'm not sad, I'm just tired. Tired of watching the people I love walk toward danger. First Clara, then Rebecca, now you." She looked at Leo. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "Promise me something. Promise me you'll come back, both of you." Leo took her hand. "I promise." Clara took her other hand. "We promise." Eleanor nodded. She stood up, walked to the door, and paused. "The spare room will be waiting," she said. "Don't be gone too long." Then she went inside, and the door closed softly behind her. Rebecca was waiting on the front lawn. She had heard everything. "You're leaving tomorrow," she said. Leo nodded. "The 15th, Croft will be at the bridge at midnight." Rebecca looked at the sky, at the stars, at the creek glittering in the distance. "I used to be afraid of the water," she said. "After you pulled me out, every time I saw a lake or a river or even a puddle, I would start shaking. I couldn't breathe. I thought the water was going to reach up and pull me back under." Leo waited. "But then I realized something. The water wasn't trying to pull me under. It was trying to show me something. All those faces, all those drowned souls, they weren't trying to hurt me. They were trying to tell me their names. They wanted to be remembered." She turned to face him. "That's what you do, isn't it? You remember, you witness. You carry the names so they don't have to." Leo put his hand on her shoulder. That's what we all do. You, Clara, Eleanor, even Thomas the cat probably. We're all witnesses. We all carry the weight of the people we've lost and the people we've saved. Rebecca smiled. It was a small smile, sad and brave and full of something that looked like hope. Then go witness, Leo, go remember. And when you come back, when you've witnessed every river and every lake and every forgotten pool, I'll be here. We'll all be here. She hugged him. Then she walked inside and Leo was alone on the lawn. He didn't sleep that night. He sat on the porch swing, the bone knife in his lap, the photograph in his hand. The woman's face stared up at him from the black and white reflection. Sad, patient, waiting. 100 years, Leo thought. She's been waiting for a witness for 100 years. How many others were waiting? How many rivers? How many lakes? How many forgotten pools, hidden in forests and fields and the spaces between towns, holding the weight of souls who had drowned alone and unlamented? He couldn't witness all of them, he knew that, but he could witness this one, and then the next one, and then the next. That was the witness's road. It never ended. It just kept going, winding through the landscape of grief and memory and hope, carrying the names of the forgotten so they would never be alone. Leo folded the photograph and tucked it into his pocket. The sun was rising, the birds were singing. Somewhere in Iowa, a river was waiting. He stood up, walked to his truck and got in. Clara was already in the passenger seat, her backpack at her feet, her recording device in her hand. "Ready?" she asked. Leo started the engine. The bone knife hummed softly beneath the seat. "No," he said, "but that's never stopped me before." He put the truck in gear and drove toward the rising sun. Behind him, Ashford Creek slept on, peaceful and ordinary and waiting for his return. Ahead of him, the witness's road stretched into the horizon. And somewhere, in a river in Iowa, a woman who had been drowning for 100 years opened her eyes and smiled. "He's coming," she whispered. "The witness is coming." The water rippled, and the river began to sing. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8. The River in Iowa. The drive to Iowa took 2 days. Flat fields, endless sky, wind turbines turning slowly in the distance, their blades catching the autumn light like the arms of sleeping giants. Leo had spent so much time in forests and mountains and small towns tucked into valleys that he had forgotten how big the middle of the country was. How empty, how full of sky. Clara slept for most of the drive, curled up in the passenger seat, her head against the window, her breath fogging the glass. Leo didn't wake her. She needed the rest. They both did. The bone knife hummed softly beneath the seat, not loud, not urgent, just present, a reminder that they were heading toward something, toward someone, toward a woman who had been drowning for 100 years. They arrived in Iowa on the afternoon of October 14th. The town was called Millbrook, a small farming community with a grain silo, a post office, a church with a white steeple, and a river that ran along the eastern edge of Main Street. Leo parked the truck outside the grain silo and walked to the riverbank. The water was brown and slow, carrying bits of leaves and twigs from the upstream trees. It looked ordinary, forgettable, the kind of river you cross on a bridge without looking down. But Leo felt it, the weight, the waiting, the 100 years of silence pressing against the surface like a held breath. "She's here," Clara said, coming to stand beside him. Her voice was quiet, reverent. "I can feel her." Leo nodded. The bone knife was warm against his hip, not hot, not burning, just warm the way a living thing is warm. "What's her name?" Clara asked. Leo didn't know. The photograph hadn't told him. Croft's note hadn't told him, but the river knew. The water held her name like a secret waiting to be spoken. "We'll find out tonight," Leo said, "at midnight." They spent the afternoon exploring Millbrook. The town was small, smaller than Ashford Creek even. A few hundred people, most of them farmers or shopkeepers or retirees who had moved here for the quiet. The diner served meatloaf and mashed potatoes, and pie that was so good Clara almost cried. The librarian, a young woman with bright pink hair and glasses, told them the town had been founded in 1873 and had never had a single murder. Not even one, Clara asked. The librarian shook her head. Cleanest town in the county, always has been. Leo and Clara exchanged a glance. Cleanest town in the county. No murders, no drownings, no disappearances. But the river remembered. At 11:30 p.m. they walked to the bridge. The bridge was old iron trusses, wooden planks, the kind of bridge that had been built in the 1920s and never replaced. It spanned the river at its narrowest point, maybe 50 feet from bank to bank. The water below was black and still, reflecting the half-moon and nothing else. Croft was already there. He stood at the center of the bridge, leaning on the railing, looking down at the water. His journal was tucked under his arm. His device, the one that clicked and hummed in the presence of haunted water, was silent. "Croft," Leo said. The old man turned. He looked older than he had in Maine, thinner, paler, with shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before, but he was smiling. "You came," he said. "You knew I would." Croft nodded. He looked at Clara, then back at Leo. "The river has been singing for 3 weeks. Not loud, just a whisper, but I heard it. I followed it here, and I found her." He gestured to the water. "She's been here for 100 years, drowning but not dead, waiting but not hoping. She's the oldest one I've found since the drowning god." Leo walked to the railing and looked down. The water was black, but beneath the surface he could see lights, the same tiny, pulsing lights he had seen in Maine. Not as many, not as bright, but there. "What's her name?" Leo asked. Croft opened his journal and read from a page covered in notes and sketches. Helen Parrish. She drowned on October 15, 1924. She was 17 years old. She was walking home from a dance when she slipped on the wet bank and fell into the river. Her date, a boy named William, jumped in after her. He survived. She didn't. Croft closed the journal. Her body was never found. The river took her and the river kept her. For 100 years she's been down there waiting for someone to see her, to remember her, to tell her that she existed and that mattered. Leo looked at the water, at the lights, at the face that had been reflected in the photograph, young and beautiful and terribly sad. "Helen," he whispered, "Helen Parrish." The water rippled, the lights pulsed, and from somewhere deep beneath the surface, Leo heard a voice, faint and thin and trembling with 100 years of silence. "You said my name." Leo knelt at the edge of the bridge. The bone knife was hot now, almost too hot to hold. He didn't let go. "I said your name," Leo said, "and I'll keep saying it. Helen Parrish, you existed, you mattered, you were not forgotten." The water rippled again. The lights grew brighter. The voice grew stronger. "No one has said my name in 100 years. No one has remembered. I thought I would be down here forever, alone in the dark, drowning forever." "You're not alone anymore," Leo said. "I'm here, we're here, Clara and Croft and me. We came to witness you, to remember you, to carry you." The water began to glow, not the pale blue of the creek or the cold white of the well. Gold, warm and soft, the color of sunrise. "I'm afraid," Helen whispered. "I've been down here so long, I don't know how to come up." Leo reached out his hand, not toward the water, toward the lights, toward Helen. "Then don't come up," he said. "Just let go, let the water release you, let the memory fade, let yourself rest." The gold light pulsed, once, twice, 3 times. Then the surface of the river broke. Helen rose slowly, like a bubble rising through deep water. She was young, 17, just as Croft had said. Her dress was old-fashioned, pale blue, wet and clinging to her thin frame. Her hair was dark and tangled, full of leaves and riverweed. Her eyes were closed. But she was smiling. Leo watched as she rose through the water, past the lights, past the darkness, toward the surface. Clara grabbed his arm. Croft held his breath. And then Helen opened her eyes. They were blue, not the pale blue of the creeks drowned, not the dark blue of the wells forgotten, just blue, human blue, the blue of a girl who had been 17 once, who had gone to a dance, who had slipped on a wet bank and fallen into a river and never come back up. "Leo," she whispered. Leo reached down. His hand touched the water. Helen's hand rose to meet his. The moment their fingers touched, the world went white. Leo saw her life. Not the drowning, the life. The moments that had come before. Helen as a child, running through fields of corn, her braids flying behind her. Helen as a young woman, laughing with her friends, dancing at the town social. Helen as a daughter, helping her mother in the kitchen, learning to bake bread, learning to sew, learning to be the person everyone expected her to be. And then the dance. October 15, 1924, a dress she had made herself. A boy named William, nervous and sweet, holding her hand too tightly. The walk home along the riverbank. The wet grass. The misplaced step. The fall. The cold, the dark, the silence. And then 100 years of waiting. "I could hear them," Helen whispered, her voice inside Leo's mind. "The people on the bridge, the people in the town. They walked past me every day and they never knew I was there. I screamed for help for the first 10 years. Then I stopped. There was no point." Leo held her hand tighter. "I hear you now. I know, that's why I can finally let go." The gold light exploded. The river rose, the bridge shook. And then silence. Leo opened his eyes. He was lying on the riverbank, his head in Clara's lap. The bone knife lay beside him, dark and silent. The water was clear. The lights were gone. "Helen," Leo whispered. Clara stroked his hair. "She's gone, Leo. You witnessed her. You remembered her. She let go." Leo sat up slowly. His head ached. His chest ached. But the ache was familiar now, the ache of having witnessed something important. "She was 17, Leo said. "She was just a girl. She went to a dance and never came home." Croft knelt beside him, his journal open. "I'll write her name. I'll put her in the book. She won't be forgotten." Leo looked at the river. It was just a river now, brown and slow and ordinary. But somewhere beneath the surface, a 100-year-old girl was finally at peace. "Thank you," Leo whispered, "for letting me see you." The river rippled, soft and gentle like a sigh. Then it was still. They spent the night in a motel on the edge of town. Croft sat in the corner, writing in his journal, his face illuminated by the dim lamp on the nightstand. Clara sat on the bed, her back against the headboard, her recording device in her hand. Leo stood at the window, looking out at the dark street. "There's something I don't understand," Clara said. Leo turned. "What?" "Helen was waiting for a witness for 100 years, but you didn't have to go into the water. You didn't have to cut anything or fight anything. You just said her name, touched her hand, and she was free." Croft looked up from his journal, because she wasn't being held by a hunger. She wasn't trapped by a seed or a wound or a drowning god. She was just lost, forgotten. No one remembered her name, so she couldn't let go. He set down his pen. The drowning god created hungers. The hungers created prisons. But Helen wasn't in a prison. She was in a waiting room. She was waiting for someone to say her name so she could finally leave. Leo looked at his hand, the hand that had touched Helen's, the hand that had witnessed 100 years of silence. "So that's all it takes?" Leo asked. "A name?" Croft shook his head. "Not just a name, a witness, someone to carry the memory, someone to say you existed and you mattered. That's what you do, Leo. That's what you've always done." Leo sat down on the edge of the bed. The bone knife was in his lap, dark, silent, ordinary. "There are more, aren't there? More Helens, more forgotten souls, more rivers and lakes and creeks and wells, all holding the weight of people who drowned alone." Croft nodded slowly. Hundreds, thousands, maybe more. The world is full of forgotten water, Leo, and every drop of it holds a memory. Leo closed his eyes. He thought about the creek, the well, the quarry, the lake, the river, the faces, the names, the weight. "I can't witness all of them," he said. "No," Croft agreed, "but you can witness some of them, and the ones you witness, the ones you remember, they won't be forgotten. That's enough. That has to be enough." Leo opened his eyes. Clara was looking at him. Croft was looking at him. Even the bone knife seemed to be looking at him, waiting for his decision. "Okay," Leo said, "then let's find the next one." End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9. The Witness's Map. The map was old. Not old like the photographs in Martha's basement or the journals in Croft's cabin. Old like the land itself, parchment that had been folded and unfolded so many times that the creases had turned to soft cloth. The ink was brown with age, the lines were faded, and the names of towns had been written in hands that had been dead for centuries. Croft spread it across the motel room floor, weighing down the corners with coffee cups and shoes and the bone knife, which had gone dark again. "This is everything," Croft said. "Every body of water I've documented in 30 years. Every creek, every well, every quarry, every lake, every river that carried a memory it shouldn't have carried." Leo knelt beside the map. The scale was impossible. The map covered the entire country, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, from the Canadian border to the Gulf of Mexico. And scattered across its surface, marked with tiny red X's, were hundreds of locations. "Hundreds," Clara said, reading his mind. "There are hundreds of them." Croft nodded. "And those are just the ones I've found. There are more, many more. Water remembers everything, Leo. Every drowning, every tear, every prayer whispered into the deep. The map is endless." Leo traced his finger along the route they had traveled. Ashford Creek to the well in Whitlock, to the quarry in Vermont, to the lake in Minnesota, to the river in Maine, to the river in Iowa. A line of red X's stretching across the center of the country like a scar. "Why did you show me this?" Leo asked. Croft sat back on his heels. "Because I'm old, because I'm tired, because I've been chasing the hunger for 30 years and I can't chase it anymore." He looked at Leo. His eyes were wet. "You're the witness now, Leo. Not because the knife chose you, not because the water knows your name, because you choose to witness. Every time you walk toward the water instead of away from it, you prove that you're worthy of the name." Leo looked at the map, at the hundreds of red X's, at the countless souls waiting beneath the surface of forgotten creeks and unnamed rivers and wells that had been sealed and paved over and lost to time. "I can't do this alone," Leo said. "You won't have to," Clara said. She knelt beside him and placed her hand on the map. "I'm here. Eleanor is in Ashford Creek. Rebecca is waiting. Even Thomas the cat will probably come if we offer him enough tuna." Croft smiled. "And I'll be here too. Not in the field, I'm too old for that now. But here at the end of the phone, I'll document, I'll research. I'll find the names of the forgotten so you can speak them when you reach the water." Leo looked at the map for a long time. Then he folded it carefully, tucked it into his jacket pocket and stood up. "Where's the closest one?" he asked. Croft pointed to a red X in western Nebraska, not far from the Colorado border. "A creek unnamed. The locals call it Whisper Creek. There have been 7 drownings there since 1950. None of the bodies were ever found." Leo nodded. "Then we leave in the morning." That night, Leo dreamed of the map. Not the map Croft had given him, a different map, older, vaster, a map of the world before humans had walked it, when the only witnesses were the stars and the wind and the water itself. In the dream, Leo stood at the edge of an ocean, not the ocean of memory from the drowning god, a real ocean, with waves and salt and the smell of something ancient and alive. And standing at the water's edge, her feet in the foam, was a woman. Not the first hunger, not Helen, someone else, someone Leo had never seen before but somehow recognized. "You're the next one," Leo said. The woman turned. Her face was kind, not terrible. Her eyes were the color of deep water. "I'm not a hunger," she said. "I'm a door. Like the first hunger was a door, like the drowning god was a scar, I'm what comes after." Leo stepped closer. The water lapped at his boots. "After what?" "After witnessing. When the hungers are fed, when the scars are healed, when the forgotten are remembered. After all of that, there's still the water, still the world, still the endless cycle of drowning and remembering and letting go." She reached out her hand. "You can't witness everything, Leo. You can't save everyone. But you can witness this moment, this ocean, this door. And you can choose what comes next." Leo looked at her hand, at the water, at the map of the world spread across the surface of the waves. "What comes next?" he asked. The woman smiled. "Whatever you want, that's the gift of witnessing. You've carried the weight of the forgotten. You've spoken the names of the drowned. You've seen the face of the drowning god and taught it how to rest. Now you get to choose." She turned and walked into the ocean. The water rose around her waist, her shoulders, her chin. "Choose wisely, Leo Hargrave. The world is full of water, and the water is full of memory, but you are full of something else." She disappeared beneath the waves. Leo woke with the taste of salt on his lips. He told Clara about the dream over breakfast at the Millbrook diner. She listened without interrupting, her fork hovering over her pancakes. When he finished, she set the fork down and folded her hands on the table. "What do you think it means?" she asked. Leo shook his head. "I don't know. The woman said I could choose what comes next, but I don't know what the choices are." "Maybe that's the point. Maybe you're not supposed to know yet. Maybe you're supposed to keep walking, keep witnessing, keep carrying the weight. And when the time comes, you'll know what to choose." Leo looked out the window. The river was visible from the diner, brown and slow and ordinary. No lights, no faces, no whispers, just water. "Helen is free," Leo said. "We witnessed her. We said her name. She let go. But there are hundreds more on Croft's map. Thousands. How do I choose which ones to witness first?" Clara reached across the table and took his hand. "One at a time," she said. "The same way you've done everything. One name, one face, one drowning, one witness. You can't save them all, Leo, but you can save the ones in front of you." Leo squeezed her hand. "Whisper Creek," he said. "Nebraska, 7 drownings since 1950, no bodies ever found." Clara smiled. "Then let's go find them." They left Millbrook that afternoon. Croft stayed behind. He said he needed to document Helen's story, to add her name to the list of the witnessed, to make sure she would never be forgotten again. He promised to meet them in Nebraska in a week. Leo drove. Clara navigated. The map was spread across the dashboard, the red X's glowing in the afternoon sun. "The world is full of forgotten water," Clara said quietly. "I never realized how much." Leo nodded. "Neither did I, but now that I know, I can't unknow it. Now that I've seen the faces, I can't unsee them." "That's the curse of the witness." "No," Leo said, "that's the gift." They crossed into Nebraska as the sun was setting. The flat fields of Iowa gave way to the rolling hills of the Sand Hills, grass-covered dunes that stretched to the horizon like frozen waves. The sky was enormous, painted in shades of orange and pink and purple, and the air smelled of hay and dust and something else. Something that reminded Leo of the creek. Clara was studying the map. Whisper Creek is about 50 miles north of here. Croft's notes say it's off a dirt road, hidden in a valley between 2 hills. There's no sign, no bridge, just the creek and the grass and the silence. Leo glanced at her. "You sound like you've been there before." "I feel like I've been there before. In my dreams, maybe, or in one of my past lives. The creek is familiar, Leo, like I've drowned there." Leo's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "You're not going to drown there, not this time." Clara smiled. I know, because you're going to witness it. You're going to say the names of the 7 forgotten souls and you're going to set them free. And I'm going to be standing beside you, holding your hand, making sure you don't fall in. Leo looked at her, at the birthmark above her left eyebrow, at the face of a woman who had drowned 12 times and still wasn't afraid of the water. I love you, Leo said. The words came out before he could stop them. He hadn't planned to say them. He hadn't even known he felt them. But as soon as they left his mouth, he knew they were true. Clara was quiet for a long moment. The truck rolled down the empty highway. The sun dipped below the horizon. I love you too, Clara said. I think I've loved you since the moment you walked into the creek to save me. No one had ever done that before. No one had ever chosen me, not in 12 lifetimes. Leo pulled the truck to the side of the road. He turned to face her. Clara. She kissed him. It was soft and warm and tasted like the river in Iowa and the creek in Ashford Creek and something else. Something that felt like home. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. Don't die, she whispered. Promise me you won't die, not in Nebraska, not anywhere, not ever. Leo touched her cheek. I promise. They camped that night under the Nebraska stars. The sky was so clear that Leo could see the Milky Way, a river of light flowing across the darkness. He lay on his back, Clara beside him, her head on his chest, and he watched the stars and thought about the map. Hundreds of red X's, hundreds of forgotten souls, hundreds of rivers and creeks and wells and lakes, all holding the weight of people who had drowned alone. He couldn't witness all of them, he knew that now, but he could witness some of them. He could say their names, he could carry their memories, he could make sure they were not forgotten. That was enough, that had to be enough. Leo, Clara murmured, half asleep. Yeah. Tomorrow, when we go to Whisper Creek, what do you think we'll find? Leo looked at the stars, at the river of light, at the infinite darkness between. I think we'll find 7 people who have been waiting to be remembered, Leo said, and I think we'll remember them. Clara snuggled closer. Good, she said, that's what witnesses do. She fell asleep. Leo stayed awake, watching the stars, holding her close. The bone knife hummed softly beneath the seat. Somewhere to the north, Whisper Creek flowed through a hidden valley, carrying the memories of 7 forgotten souls. And in the morning, Leo would go to meet them.